All right, so this is the day two of the 30 camera challenge. Basically, trying to get good at talking in front of the camera. I've done the first day one. Remember, it says 30 days, but I only have 2 weeks. So I'm going to cram it all in, try to get a couple of them out of the way each day. So this is technically day two, but actually day one. But the day two's content is basically about discussing a book that I've read before. And today, I want to talk to you about this beautiful book right here. It was basically loaned to me by a good friend of mine and a colleague. Brett, if you're hearing this, hello. This is from Brett, and this is basically a very short book about how you can take better photographs, basically. And today, I'll just talk to you about what it is about, and hopefully, we'll just go from there. So, this book is pretty much it's very self-explanatory, really. It takes you to this space where, without you know boring you too much about specific like technical content, it's very layman's term, and it tells you all the necessary stuff that you need to know, but it doesn't overburden you with a lot of things. So it first talks to you about the technical jargons, because obviously you need to know about the technical jargons, right? It goes through the basic stuff like aperture, that's your depth of field, whether it's shallow or deep. It takes you to about. It also talks to you about ISO, which is the sensitivity of light. And it's basically darkness versus noisy light. Because what happens is that if you turn your ISO all the way up, your footage becomes your camera shot becomes very noisy and grainy, and that you don't want that, right? But sometimes if you don't have enough light source, like you might have to crank that up. So it's a fine balance you have to make. It also talks to you about shutter speed, and it tells you whether you want a blurry photo, one of those like really like city light, or like that star photos where like everything's moving really slowly, that kind of stuff, versus like a very like snapshot freeze, like almost like a football match when you're taking a photo, like a sports photography, basically. It takes you through, the other things like focal length, close-up shot, wide shot, and all that kind of stuff, and it takes you through exposure, basically. That's your when you put it into the program mode, right? And I'll talk to you about the camera presets later. But basically, that's the number that you look at, and it makes the photo like really dark or really light. It's like a halfway between manual mode, if that makes sense. And like this exposure um, number helps you determine what that is, whether something is really overexposed or is underexposed, and you get to fiddle around with that number. And if that number is close to zero, then you're pretty much on point. Like you can take the photo and have a look, basically, right? Okay, so the next up, the book basically talks about the camera presets, and it takes you through, like, even though it has a different camera brand makers, it just takes you through the really basic ones that every camera makers have. The first one is the aperture focus setting, shutter speed focus, like the program mode, which I talked to you about previously, and the manual mode. And I like the part in the book where it says, manual mode is good, but also the program mode shouldn't be neglected, because by the time you fiddle around with your settings in the manual mode, like the event has happened, or like you're too late, and you've lost that shot. Timing is everything, so you need to make sure you capture the right moment, right? So program mode enables you to do a couple of things, and the other components, whether it's shutter speed, whether it's aperture, it will get you to the right setting that it thinks that it's the right one to use, right? And that will let you have like a halfway between manual mode where you can fiddle around with a couple of settings you think you're comfortable with, and then you take the photo as soon as possible, basically, right? And I like that part, because I thought, all the other settings are rubbish and manual is the way to go. But, it seems like the book has a really good point that you need to capture the right moment, and sometimes program mode is nothing to scoff at. And finally, it takes you through, the lenses, what type of lens, whether it's zoom lens or prime lens, and whether it's a wide lens, all that kind of technical jargon stuff. Um, Another thing that I also figured out is that the lens costs more than the body. The lenses are so expensive. I don't know how people just afford that like that. But then again, in saying that, I spent like 3,000 plus on a graphics card when I was gaming in my prime, and I thought that was a good deal. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe camera lenses last a lot longer. So and it doesn't, and your 3090 doesn't become like $1,500 after 2 years. So maybe it's a better investment. You never know. But the book basically talks to you about lens as well. And then finally it takes you a couple of things like lighting, what's a soft light, what's the hard light, and when you should use flash and when you shouldn't use flash. Most of the times you shouldn't use flash. Um, and how that all interact with the camera. And the best thing about this book is it shows you the settings and what settings do to photos. And there's really good photographers photos in there, and it tells you, hey, if the aperture is high, it does this. If the ISO is high, it does this, but if it's low, it does that. And with all these on top of the composition and some of the tips and tricks and so on. So this book, I've read this twice so far, and I'm sure I'll always come back to it because there are a couple of sections where it tells you very concisely like what it is and what setting you should take and what you should consider. So definitely book that I will be reading it for a while. The only thing is that I actually once I've done this, obviously this is filming, but I need to get out there and take the photos and practice taking the photos. And you might be asking, David, you're doing YouTube. This is probably going to be the frame. You're not gonna take any photographs, right? Like it has to be a film. Like why aren't you studying like videography instead of like photography? Well, I realized that composition is something that you need to learn, and like getting that mindset of like, oh, this is a really good shot, or thinking which shots and what like rule of third or whatever composition that it might be and what kind of settings might be. I think it will be really transferable as well. And I go for a walk around the block, and sometimes I go for runs and whatnot. And I think like photography, like having a camera wrapped around my neck while I do my walk or like go hiking, I think it will be a really good addition to my hobby list. Hopefully I can share that with some friends and hopefully with you guys as well. But I think it will be. I mean, I have this gear anyway. You know what I mean? So I might as well just use it. I might as well get really good at it. And who knows? Like with this justification, I could change my camera to a better camera or better lens, whatever that might be, right? So that's pretty much it. How long is the time? Yeah, it's been 8 minutes and 30 seconds so far and counting. I think I made good time. I said I'm gonna make it between 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm just around that time. Some of the things that I try to fix today, well, on this day two content, is say less ums. I really hope after reviewing this footage, it's going to be the case. And if I just scroll up a bit and look at the notes that I've taken, I think it might be interesting and see if any of these actually matches what you've seen in my previous one. Basically, it says I can't hear myself, so I've positioned and increased the gain of my mic. I'm hoping that would fix it, and I just need to mumble less. That's what I'm gonna do. Like speak a bit more concisely. I need to smile more. In the beginning of the footage, I think I was a lot more grim looking. And also, I realized that I'm putting my fingers to my face a lot, and I need to stop that as well. So that's everything for now. I'll catch you in the next one, okay? See you later. I feel a lot more confident, by the way. The second video, a lot better, I feel like. Anyway.